Welcome everyone to Packback's Curiosity webinar, this month featuring Dr. Kat West, using artificial intelligence to improve critical thinking and writing. I am ecstatic to be working with Kat on this webinar. We both just got back from the ITC conference, which I know a few attendees were excited to learn a little bit more about her study and a little bit more about Packback. So I would love just to jump right into things. Oh, and again, my name is Alex from the Packback team. The agenda, as I mentioned, is going to be having Dr. Kat West from UNC share some of her study that's taken place using Packback compared to an LMS discussion board, compared to some critical reading. I am excited to have her share her results, and I hope you are excited to learn them. So without any further ado, I'd love to introduce Dr. Kathleen West. Kat, I hope it's okay if we go by first names from here.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Kat, go ahead and take over.
So again, my name is Dr. Kat West. I am at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. A little bit about my background: I earned a BA in psychology and then went on to get a PhD in neurosciences, following up with that with a postdoctoral fellowship in biochemistry. But really my true passion has always been teaching, and I've been doing a lot of that for the past 13 or so years. I've taught in a lot of different formats. I've taught in the traditional face-to-face classroom of all ranging sizes from 16 this semester to 350. I've also taught 100% online, and I've also taught kind of back and forth in what we call a hybrid class here, which is a 1 day a week where we meet together, but then they also have basically an online component that they have to do. So beyond that, taught a lot of different classes, again, kind of bridging that neuroscience feel between biology and psychology, but I've also taught other things like a research methods course. I'm teaching a senior seminar right now this semester. I've taught social psych. I've even gone kind of a little bit outside of my discipline, although related, and taught Algebra 1 as well as Biology 1 and 2. So really what we wanted to talk to you about today was some stuff that I've been working on. I've been using Packback for about 3 years now, and I was really just wondering, is it working as well as I think it is? Because it seemed like my students were getting this really great benefit, but I'm not just comfortable by saying, yeah, I think it works. Again, that's just the science in me that they'll never get rid of. So I wanted to actually do a real test to see, is it really doing what I think it's doing? And so that's where I came up with this idea of, let me take a couple of my classes in the same semester and compare Packback users to the normal LMS discussion board, to other things that they could do that are related but not quite the same thing. So for example, the third group that I had here in this particular study just read quality sample questions and answers. And again, what I really just wanted to be able to show with some real data is it really helping my students the way I think that it is? So to give you a little bit of background about why I really like using Packback and what some of the benefits are that I think I've seen before I just jump straight into my data, is I really like that their core objectives align with how I like to teach pedagogically. So the very first thing that they think is very essential is that you need to establish a foundation for asking great questions. And I also feel that that's really, really important. If you're going to teach a student to communicate and to express themselves written or verbally within your discipline, and it doesn't just have to be psychology, this is any discipline, they've got to know how to ask a really good question about that discipline. So the very first thing that students will do when they first log on, and again, this is all hands-off for you as the instructor, but the students will be walked through a curiosity tutorial where they'll be taught the basics of how to ask a good question. What are the components of a good question? What makes a question better than a different question? In other words, how can you make your question even stronger by adding additional content or by linking it to a source, for example? So the students, again, when they very first log on, will be taken through this tutorial. And I loved that. I also loved, again, that it was hands-off for me as the instructor. So let's actually jump into a little bit of what I did. So now that I've taught my students, and Packback has helped me with that, to ask good questions, let's actually talk about what I did. So again, to refresh, I had 3 groups. All of these were online classes, and the reason I stress that is just because I chose that format for this particular experiment so that each could have the same basic teaching. So they all watched the exact same recorded lectures. They took the exact same tests and the exact same quizzes. So it's just trying to keep that as an element the same between the classes. Again, group one, which in this particular case is this dark green bar that you'll see here, used Packback for a weekly discussion. The light green bar here that you'll see used or just read quality questions and answers and acknowledged that they had read them. And then this dotted line, which is actually a very surprising fact for me, was the group that used the discussion board that's provided through the LMS. And for my school, it's Canvas, but I've used Blackboard and several others as well. And again, what you find is that you have fairly steady and regular participation between the Packback group, which again, that's that dark green, and the group that just had to read and acknowledge a question. And again, dear gosh, I hope they would participate. But again, what shocked me is the LMS group. And again, what you see is their participation is absolutely horrible and very sporadic. Like they do okay on some weeks, but then they just do awful on other weeks. And the biggest thing I found when I kind of looked at what was going on here is that they weren't following instructions. So the way that I grade this is as an all or nothing. Either you get the points or you don't because you follow the requirements or you didn't. And what I found is that because Packback is constantly prompting the students, here is what is required for a quality post. Here is what is required for a quality answer. Here is what makes a good counterpoint. Here's how you actually structure a counterpoint. It's doing all that teaching, whereas the LMS is not. Even though the students had been given the instructions, they absolutely weren't following them. So the reason they weren't getting participation credit is because they just absolutely weren't following the instructions. That's actually also what I'm showing you here, besides the fact that it was significantly lower participation. This yellow bar here, which is it looks like a fourth group, but it's not. It's what I would have expected Section 2's participation, so this group here, is what I would have expected their participation to be if they had used Packback instead of the LMS. Because again, Packback would have coached them every single time about how to write a quality post, how to write a question, so they wouldn't have lost their participation points. And as you see, if they had been using Packback, it's very likely that those students would not have had such a significantly lowered amount of participation. So this kind of feeds into the second thing that I really like that Packback does, which is providing an inspiring and constructive feedback loop. So not only is it constantly showing the student how to write, but it frees up my time to use some of the other tools that are in Packback to give them feedback about how to improve their writing, how to improve their question asking, how to improve their responding. Some of the really cool things that are here is that there's stuff that's happening behind the scenes that you as the instructor don't even have to worry about, but that are helping the students to be better writers. And all of this is that artificial intelligence that I was so excited about. So anytime the student has done something that doesn't quite fit, either there's a little bit of plagiarism that has happened, or the student has asked something that doesn't meet it, or they asked a question that is too closed, it's not an open-ended question, or sometimes they'll put things on there that aren't questions at all. All of that is going to get flagged by the artificial intelligence. It will then go into this moderation queue, which is then looked at by someone at Packback. So again, still something that the instructor isn't even having to worry about. And then it will be decided whether or not to completely remove it or not. So again, a lot of things are happening behind the scenes that is giving student constant feedback, because they will get coaching emails from Packback saying, here's why your post was moderated, here's what you can improve on, here's what you can do better next time. So a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes that I don't have to stress about. So that when I do get to interact with students, I can use features like coaching to do a one-on-one interaction with the student to say, okay, good question, but let's make it a little better by doing this. Or I can do this appraising, which everybody sees, and I can say, I love this question because you did this and this. I think everybody should try to use this style. So my interactions with the class are a whole lot more productive, a whole lot more actual teaching is occurring, so the students are not just getting, you didn't meet criteria, please go back and reread the instructions. Here's those coaching emails that I was just telling you about. So let's say I did decide to tell the student, this is good, but it needs just a little bit more. The student is going to get this whole interactive email. It took me about 5 seconds to type in what I thought the student needed to know. The student is going to get this automatically generated email. It looks like it comes from me, and it's giving them instructions on what they can do to improve. So a really simple way to go back and forth with the student. It's built in to the system so that you don't have to go externally and send them any kind of email, but it helps the student understand why their post was okay but could be made better. So again, all of this is about teaching. Same thing with praising a post. So here's one that I praised that everybody gets to see. And this is actually one from my course specifically. And I told the student here, but again, everybody can see it. I really love this question because I love that you're making connections between our course material and the real world. So I'm just encouraging them to, yes, absolutely, good job. Keep asking questions like this. And the students will all be able to see, first of all, what I said that was praised, but they'll also be cued that I praised and featured this post because of the little icons that appear at the top. So it's, again, very user-friendly for the student, very simple for me to give this feedback, and it has a really good maximum impact on the student's learning. Then the last thing that Packback is really set on as far as their core objectives is, again, you establish the foundation, you give them this way to learn by feedback, and then all of that works together to fuel their curiosity. So if they feel that they're doing better and if they feel like they know how to succeed, they're going to become more and more curious about your topic, and they're going to bring in questions and responses of stuff that you just find incredible. I'm always blown away every semester by the kinds of content that my students can bring in, because once they feel like they're getting the tools and they understand what to do, they take it and run, which is so exciting as an instructor. To that end, another really great thing, again, that's happening automatically behind the scenes, is that every student, every time they post, is given a curiosity score. So they can kind of see in the immediate moment how good, what kind of quality their post had. And again, the artificial intelligence is doing this behind the scenes, kind of based on an algorithm with 3 parts. The first part is by 20%, was it a credible post? 20%, the presentation, did they actually post things correctly? Did they follow the formats? Did they include all of the different things? And then 60% on their effort. How much did they actually write? So it would include things like the word count to get a score there. But again, what's really nice about this feature, one, I don't have to do it as the instructor, but the student gets immediate feedback. So they don't even have to wait on me to come in with the praising or the coaching to see, was this post as good as the one I did before, better, not as good, etc., etc. And then every week, the students also get an automatic email. Again, it looks like it's coming from me, but it's about the class, and it's called the Curious Reader Digest. Now, if I had gone through and featured posts, which I like to do, because again, it gives the students that positive reinforcement feedback, those will be the ones that get sent to the student. It will say, here's all the posts that were featured this week. Here's all the posts that Dr. West thinks are really good. But let's just say, because it's always going to happen, you're going to have a week where you're really busy and you just can't get to things in one particular week. That's okay. It will use those curiosity scores and other measures to basically send the same email based on the top scores for that week. So it's not like you have to stress out, oh, this week I know I'm going to be at a conference and I'm not going to have a chance to get it graded. No worries. The students won't even know that you were gone necessarily. They will definitely, be curious about what was featured that particular week. All right, so some other things about my actual results. So I was saying earlier that I ran this experiment and I had 3 different groups. I had section 1 that used Packback. I had section 2 that used the LMS discussion board, which in my case, again, was Canvas. And then I had section 3 that used a different that just read quality questions and answers that they didn't know actually came from Packback, but they did, and they just had to acknowledge it. And again, I wanted to demonstrate with an actual experimentation data that I was seeing student improvement. So what you're looking at here are short answer written exam scores. And as I would expect, and again, light bars are the midterm for the 3 sections, dark green bars are the final for the 3 different sections, that the groups that did writing had significantly better scores than the group that didn't do any writing. And this is what we've seen very consistently in the psychology literature. So this didn't really shock me a whole lot. Unfortunately, I didn't get completely significant data just because of probably the number. I lost a little bit of power with the particular students. But I did see increases. Again, this is like 0.06, so close to significant. But increases in scores between even the 2 sections. So those that use Packback overall did have higher scores, right, than the group that just used the discussion board or the group that did the reading. So again, I'm seeing what I thought I was seeing. They are doing better, particularly on written assignments. And then here's where I was most excited. So let me walk you through this, and I'll start off also with a caveat. So the caveat is this particular class is one of the challenges is there's an enormous DFW rate, which means a lot of students will get D's or F's or they will withdraw from the course. So besides just trying to teach them how to write, I'm also inspiring them to stay in the course and stick with it, even though the material might be challenging. And so if a tool can help me do that, even better. So what you're looking at here are the number or percentage of students that got this particular letter grade in the class. And I'm going to start with the gray section. This is the section that's taught how most people typically teach this course, again, with just the added, they read questions and answers that acknowledge it. And as you can see, fairly decent number of B's, the normal amount of C's that we see, but then here's where that awful DFW rate comes in. I mean, you can see a huge number of students that failed the class or withdrew from the class. This is also why I lost some power in my study. So again, this is what I typically see, and this is what I'm a little discouraged on. I wanted to do something to try to prevent that from happening. So if you look at my other two groups, again, the green bar here, section 1 is the one that used Packback, and the yellow bars, section 2, that used the writing, but in that discussion board. And you can see they still had quite a number of withdrawals, quite a number of D's and F's. I mean, you're never going to entirely get rid of the number of D's and F's, but here's where I got excited about these two groups. Look at some of my higher scores here. So the students that go from just getting the C to getting the B or even getting the A. Look at how much higher the Packback group is. I had almost 18% of my students got A's versus my other group, which was just a hair over 10%. Same thing with B's. I had over 30% of my Packback group getting B's, whereas it was about 24% for my LMS discussion board group. So again, there is something great that's happening, something that the Packback is giving these students, something about that teaching and coaching and constant explanation that's helping their overall grades, which is what really got me excited.
Hey, Kat, I'm a little curious about that last one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I know we've talked about this. I know we've
Sure.
talked about this slide before. It's actually my favorite one. How does this compare to Packback being used a little bit in class versus outside? Did you see a comparison of trying to bring in the LMS or the grayscale, or how did that really flesh out when we talk about in-class experience?
So let me make sure I understand your question. Are you asking about online versus in-person courses and how this differs?
Yeah, that would be a
Okay.
great starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. So this again was done with 3 online sections, and I did that mostly for research purposes, just so that I knew they were getting the exact same experience with my recorded lectures and things. But what I have seen is this exact same pattern. Again, I don't have the Packback versus LMS comparison, but I do have the Packback versus doing basically nothing at all comparison in in-person classes and online. And this is exactly what I've been seeing, is that if I don't give them something that they're doing, again, I have this horrible DFW rate. I rarely get the top scores. I get a lot of that average C score, which is okay. But again, if I can do a very simple thing to push my students up just a little bit, I'm definitely going to try it. And that's what I thought I was seeing Packback do all along. Again, even in my in-person classes, where I'm having them use Packback outside of class, but then trying to highlight it in class. Like, where is student A? This was a great question, student A. Good job this week. Is that I'm seeing a very similar trend here with a lot more A's and B's in my Packback group and a lot fewer D's, F's, and W's, at least compared to the group that didn't use anything. Yeah, that was a great question. So to kind of finish up a little bit of what we have formally presented, and again, if there's any more questions, please feel free to ask. Packback's mission is to exist to awaken and fuel the lifelong curiosity in every student. And again, that's one of the reasons I love this product. Besides the fact that I can now with data show you that it's helping them, I love that their pedagogy and their core mission matches with what I feel about my students. If I can get my students excited about some of the hardest material that we teach them in our discipline, they're definitely going to learn it better. Their experience in my class is going to be better. And overall, they're going to be a stronger student. And in my case, for my discipline, a stronger psychology major. So again, I love that this tool is easy to use. And I love that their goals align with my goals to maximize this for the student. And then I'm going to let Alex kind of finish up with some of the method and things here. And then I'll jump right back on the end if there's questions. Can you join us here, Alex, for this method?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Kat.
Sure.
So what we're looking at right now is the Packback method, sort of our Packback pedagogy, what you can expect out of the product features, professor actions, and those Packback services. I always like to really highlight that middle row, talking about what the professor expectations look like. It really comes in the form of finding that allocation of a grade percentage of around 10 to 15% of the grade towards Packback really helps the students buy into it. That second is bringing it up in class or in the online environment through that featured post or pinning. This is a great way to intrinsically motivate your students, but also have that extrinsic value of other students seeing the highlight. The featuring of a post is fantastic. It motivates the student, and it also lets other students know what the expectation is or what a strong post looks like. And then finally, being able to have a discussion or getting involved with the student's post on that weekly basis is a really important aspect of Packback. And I'd say on average, professors spend anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes a week on Packback. Kat, how much time would you say you spend weekly on Packback?
It honestly depends on the week. So it takes me about 15 to 20 minutes to grade some of my bigger classes. And I'm talking my 150 to 200 people section classes. And then beyond that, sometimes I have 5 minutes, sometimes I have the rest of the hour, and that's when I'll spend going through and giving the feedback, giving that praising or coaching that really puts that student up to the next level of learning. And the students don't seem to really notice the difference when I have 5 or 10 minutes versus when I have an hour. So it's not like you have to stress out of, oh my gosh, I've got to spend all of this time. I mean, if you have more time, wonderful. You hit more students in any one given session. But if you don't have to stress that you've ruined the tool. They're still going to get a benefit out of it. As long as you're putting in a little bit of time each week to give them a little bit, it really does bump the student up to that next level.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And that really kind of wraps up a little bit of our pedagogy. I do like to show this last slide here. I know oftentimes the idea of using a new education tech or a new tool can sound a little bit time consuming or create that anxiety feeling of I'm already got my course plans and you're worrying about your textbooks and any number of other hats you may wear as a professor administrator. But really, it's a simple process, about 2 phone calls around 30 minutes each to just totally make you the expert on Packback and where you want to be. Starts with a quick community creation, creating that community where you can set all of your standards for Packback, where you have your students participating. Oftentimes, the Ask One, Answer Two is a very popular model. And then the next step would be introducing your experience manager. So personally, the experience manager is actually my favorite feature of Packback, a dedicated individual to work with the professors throughout the semester to make sure they're achieving all of the goals that we laid out when first recognizing the value of Packback and deciding to move forward with it. They are experts in figuring out the best way to achieve those goals and make sure that what we're accomplishing with Packback also aligns with your objectives. And then there's the opportunity to do some check-ins with the EM as often as you would need or as you would like. There's a few standard ones, but again, the full-time role of the experience manager is to make sure that you have the best experience possible, both from your student's perspective and from yours. So that really wraps up the entirety of what we wanted to talk about today. I appreciate everyone's time coming in and learning a little bit more about Packback and this data study that Kat performed. Thanks again, Kat. I appreciate you taking your time. Have a great rest of your week, and I look forward to connecting again tomorrow.